Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on? I'm going back.
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, August 22nd, 2020, episode 18. We're getting up there. We're trucking
legal
along.
now.
Yes, we are. We're I guess in YouTube terms, I guess. I don't know.
No.
I don't know if that like international law or whatever that may or may not apply to that. But yeah, it's been a good run, and we're happy to keep this train rolling along. Hope everybody that's been watching is enjoying it. If you haven't been watching, you're missing out. I think, and
Yeah, probably. You're probably missing out. I mean, you're most likely missing out on an opportunity to sometimes miss out, but sometimes not. We're that good.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, if you haven't watched before, I don't know if I'd go back and listen. Actually, I would recommend go back and listen and watch the previous episodes because, we could, we're trying to get those views up, but like, you can start watching. It's never too late to start now. You can start viewing. Speaking of which, on a funny note, we're going to go ahead and kick off the show with our YouTube comment of the week. This is I know, as we've discussed, as we're approaching 10,000 subscribers rapidly, that you're going to start getting these kinds of things on your YouTube page, and we're just going to share this here. Let me bring this up, but
and thanks to all of our fans that take the time to like our page and like our videos and stuff. But here's one that felt the need to leave a comment, Kerry.
Yeah, we Denise Sullivan, which I'm sure is a real name, and not of some bot from the Ural Mountains somewhere, decided to leave us a comment saying that she was alone. Mostly I just had concern about this. If anybody knows Denise, might want to put a welfare check out. But I hope that at minimum she was, the Bacon and Egg Show was able to provide some sort of comfort and companionship during what must be a really trying time in an international pandemic. So
we're just happy to be that for everybody. We're just happy to be a part of what you do on a regular basis. And thanks for the YouTube, thanks for the comment, and we hope you're doing okay. What was it?
Denise Sullivan, yes.
Oh yeah,
Denise Sullivan, yeah.
Denise Sullivan. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, appreciate the comment, and I don't think she subscribed, so I don't know if she was quite into the Longhorn discussion last week, but at least she commented, provide us with a little bit of that, good laugh.
If you are going to go back and listen to an episode that's not this one, if this is your first one, go back and listen to last week. A lot of good Longhorn talk with our Longhorn insider Mike Holland. But yeah, welcome. If you're a first timer, welcome, and for you long-time listeners, thanks for tuning in. And let's get into it, Kerry. What do we got in the cup of coffee today?
Well, in the cup of coffee, let's. I know we've been kind of using, kind of hitting on Astros results as they come in, and I have to say these last couple weeks prior to today's show, things weren't looking too good. Astros were under 500. There was some pretty decent space between them and the Oakland A's. They're looking a lot better this week. Astros did lose last night to the San Diego Padres, but prior to last night had an 8-game winning streak going. Padres they're playing some fantastic baseball right now. I don't think there's any shame in a hard-fought loss to them. Still sitting 3.5 back of Oakland as things stand going into today's games. But yeah, Jay, what do you make of this little run over the last week that the Astros have gone on?
Well, that's what we said it needed to happen, and this is a team with enough talent to go on a run like this. They've shown in years past to just go on these big runs where they might play 500 ball for a little while, and then they'll run off like 12 of 14, and then they'll play 500 ball for a little bit, and then they'll win 10 in a row. And so the ability to go on these streaks is there. And this kind of baseball, just to be able to do enough to get into the playoffs this year will be enough, especially with the expanded playoff system. And just get into the playoffs. That's all you need to worry about if you're the Astros. And they're looking good to do that right now as the rest of the division has sort of separated a little bit. We're getting to about the midway point, just about the midway point for most teams in the season. And the cream is sort of rising to the top in most of these divisions. So, I mean, they're farther apart now from I guess the Angels are now in last place now. But either way, the point being, as long as they just keep their head above water, they'll be fine. Just get into the playoffs. It's not going to be one of those 40-win season, 40 and 20 like I thought that they could achieve. I did say, obviously, with the caveat of no injuries, and there's a lot of injuries that have happened, and a team like the Astros can fight through that and go on these runs. To see how they respond the rest of this weekend, Kerry, that's a big test to me against a very good San Diego team.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that, it's an opportunity to kind of beat up on the division a little bit. I believe the Angels are going to be coming up, Seattle again in that rotation. So it's a chance to kind of gain some more ground and really solidify at minimum that second spot in the West.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we are getting to the halfway point here, and it's actually for them. I know, kind of having some poor stretches there, but the fact that they are, where they are relative to the rest of the league is kind of impressive, given that, you lose Justin Verlander, just the general struggle. You lose Osuna, the other struggles with the bullpen, the struggles at the plate with the superstars not really doing what they've typically done. We talk about Martin Maldonado being the MVP of this team, a guy who does not. I mean, I love the guy as a catcher, but that's, his role in helping out the pitchers is why he's on this team. Right. His MLB career does not point to him being a plus batter. And here he is basically saving the Astros on the offensive side for most of this season. Now Kyle Tucker, is really starting to come into form, but like Springer's been banged up. Correa has been cold. Altuve has been
non-existent,
completely non-existent. Bregman's now hurt. We don't know how long-term that's going to be. Gurriel has been okay, but so the big names for the Astros just have not been producing. But somehow, and even you lose Garrett Cole in the offseason, you lose Verlander to injury. McCullers has been, shaky. He's had some moments, good and bad. They're still only a couple games back for top of the division, and they're in a decent, relative to the rest of the AL, doing okay. So it's a pretty impressive. You look at kind of, I don't know, at least for me, you kind of look at the big picture here about halfway through the season. Like, it's not as bad as it may have seemed about a week ago.
No, and some of those names, any good team has players step up out of nowhere to help them along when the stars aren't playing their best. The best teams find ways to make that work. And when you see guys like Miles Straw coming up big lately, Taylor Jones, the big first baseman that they called up, those are the sort of guys right now whose names are showing up in the score sheet.
Toro with a big at bat this week. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And those are guys that when you filled out your lineup card at the beginning of the season, you weren't thinking, oh, these are the guys that are going to be carrying us through the middle of the season right now. And they're doing a great job. So kudos to them for stepping up in a spot where they were absolutely needed, and especially to Maldonado, who, like you said, we've had discussions offline about him being the MVP, absolutely being the MVP of this club at the halfway point. And it's just not, like you said, not just because of the bat, but because of the way he's handled his staff, who at times have not located the ball well. They've not given the team the best chances to win. So you like to see this in a time where your best players aren't playing their best.
Yeah, I mean, just think about all the young arms that have had to be used for this season. I mean, Christian Javier is getting full-time starter rotation time. Framber Valdez has been another one that's, you have to be relying on him, and he's been great. BAAAAAAACK, like you can just name all these young arms that are coming through that Maldonado has steadied the ship for the most part. They've had some gas can type moments, but it's going to be interesting to see this second half of the season because it's going to happen really quick. I mean, we're just about a month out from the season being over, talking about 30 more games or so. And the big questions for me, because by the time we record next week, we're going to be past the halfway point of the season. So I don't know, we might as well just hit it now, expectations for the second half of the season. But if Verlander can come back, which is a big if, and it sounds like he's been throwing a little bit, Urquidy is a guy that's been throwing a little bit, can get those two guys back potentially, and you hope that the big name, your superstar marquee players start to hit the ball on a more consistent basis, anything can happen, but that goes for a lot of teams this year. I think whoever the hottest team going into the postseason is probably the team that has the best shot. I know that sounds super like oversimplistic, but
No, it makes sense though. And for me, Belak from the arm side is somebody who started off in the bullpen, came out, had a couple of long relief appearances, and then was sort of thrust into the rotation because there wasn't anybody else to do it. Or he was the best option, I guess, at the time. And he has been excellent, absolutely magnificent in every single start so far. And I believe he goes either tonight or tomorrow night. He's pitching in the San Diego series. So we'll see if he can bring it against a team that's been hotter than anybody. Had set a record earlier in the week with the first team in the history of Major League Baseball to hit a grand slam in 4 straight nights. I know that a lot has to line up for that all to happen, but for a team to be, for different people to all be seeing the ball that well, for that many people to be on base at any given time, you're doing something right. So it'll be interesting to see. I believe it's Greinke and Belak on the hill for these next 2 games. So you got guys. Greinke's seem to have come around to form, and Belak has been one of your best pitchers over the last month. So you're going your best against their best, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be an interesting downslope run into the postseason here. This quick 60-game roller coaster. So,
real quick before we push on from the Astros, does Verlander start a game this season, or regular season, or playoffs?
God, I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes, because I feel like when that whole announcement came down, I think we were on the same page with this, with 2 weeks or so and we'll reevaluate. Well, we're well beyond that. And
right.
There hasn't been any announcement from the Astros or from Verlander, Dusty Baker, anybody that seems to hint that he's going to be getting shut down. I feel like we would have, and the fact that he's throwing.
Right.
I think I almost feel like it's a get into the playoffs. Maybe get him a start before the postseason and have him ready to go for the playoffs.
I mean, Verlander at 80% in a playoff start is still probably somebody that you would want to be on the mound. I would want to be on the mound anyway. So I think if you can get him to that point, he's going to do everything he can to throw. We know this. This is just it's in his DNA. That's the type of player, whatever you can call it, whatever you want. But we know that Justin Verlander is going to do everything he can to get back on the mound, because in his mind, he's the best pitcher in the world, and he wants to be out there to show everybody that. I love the mentality. Is it realistic for him to come back in a short season like this and make an impact? I'm not as sure about that. But I think he's going to try to do everything he can. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him throw before the season came up. If he is, a setback any setback right now, he's done for the season. If he can keep progressing, like you said, he's been throwing, we'll see. But I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I guess I should say I don't see them running Verlander out there cold in the postseason. I think if anything, I can see him getting maybe a little
Oh,
spot, like a little like 1 or 2 inning kind of thing, opener type role for one game, and then
yep.
5 days later come back, pitch a more, maybe 4 or 5 innings in a starting spot, and then be ready for the postseason. The question, that being said, with the nature of this postseason being what it is, I don't think Verlander's your game one starter to open up the postseason.
No, absolutely not.
Given all that, I think it's Greinke at this point,
It's got to
and
be.
that's who you're going to lean on. It actually well, I know we got a long way to go on that, but like Greinke be like Verlander, I can almost see being the first 3 going out there, and depending on Verlander's health, McCullers, and kind of work that out as it goes. But
Yeah. I hope McCullers can shape up a little bit. He's just not been hitting his spots, and uh, you normally don't see him struggle. How do I want to word that? He'll usually throw in one of those absolutely pristine starts, even if he has a couple here and there where he gives up a few runs, gets knocked around a little bit. We just haven't seen that totally pristine McCullers look yet, and I'm worried for that. But we'll see if he can shape up a little bit. But I think it is Greinke. It has to be game one right now. And then, to be honest with you, you just go with whoever's been the best up to that point. I don't know if
yeah,
Belak will sustain what he's doing, if Framber will go out there and be the guy in the moment, and if Urquidy's back. Urquidy's already been and pitched extremely well in big moments. So you know he can handle the spotlight.
or
Uh,
if Javier is pitching the way that he did against the Dodgers at home that one game where he was just
it,
absolutely electric. And
it seems like they are not short on options in terms of people they'll be able to plug in. They just I hope they can all keep it up
yeah,
and keep this rolling up, for the stretch, because they're going to need it. There was a period of time where we weren't extremely confident in the Astros pitching, and I feel like now we've turned a corner with this, and we feel a little bit better, or I feel a little bit better about looking at the options at this point. Verlander coming back is very important for me in terms of this team being successful in the playoffs. So I hope it happens. But I think I think it's safe to say we're feeling more comfortable now with the pitching staff than we
yeah,
did a few weeks ago.
yeah. And it's that's the benefit of having, for a time, the deepest and best farm system in baseball. And
Yep.
what's interesting is all these names that we're going through, and the word Whitley hasn't been mentioned once.
Now, one time.
And there doesn't seem to be any discussion or any hint of him um, being a part of whatever happens this season up at the major league level. Which is, if you would have asked us that a year or two ago, or anything, like who's the guy that's going to come up through the system, this young arm, 10 out of 10, I think Astros followers would have said, well, it's going to be Whitley.
Yep.
And he's for whatever reason he can't put it together. I know he had his PED suspension, but why isn't this guy, why isn't he getting a look?
You see teams are all around the league calling up their young talent right now. I mean, these young guys, 20, 21, the type of players that in the past you'll see them down in the minors for longer so they can control. They're, even like fringe guys, they're just calling them up to give them at bats, and everybody, it seems like, is getting a chance if they've had any minor league experience at all. Whitley is nowhere to be found, and that's worrisome. It makes me feel like the development that we've been hoping for, just he hasn't come around.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a case where he's in Round Rock or Corpus just getting shelled. There's no minor league baseball. So it's not like the Astros are sitting there going like, well, why would we call this guy up? Because he's just getting blasted with the Express or with the Hooks in Corpus or something like that. Like, why isn't
Yeah.
the fact that he can't even get a just get called up and train with the team and kind of throw a bullpen thing here and there? Like, it's just, they must have, and obviously change in general manager and those kinds of things can can have that effect. You know, you do wonder if Jeff Luhnow had a little bit of a different perception of Whitley than Click does, but I, I guess we'll find out eventually. This is a guy that's name was thrown around for trade pieces, you know, over the last couple of years, and they wanted to protect him. They wanted to hang on to the guy, and now he can't even get a sniff when just about every other arm in the farm gets to come up and
Yeah.
get a shot.
Well, it looks like he's dinged up a little bit. He hasn't
Okay,
been
well that makes more
throwing.
sense.
He hasn't been throwing lately, but the point remains the same. Like just like seeing that now, it makes a little more sense as to why we haven't heard a lot about him. I mean, I haven't gone searching for him, and that's
Right.
probably why I didn't realize he hadn't been throwing, because he has totally been out of the conversation. And he was in the conversations between us last year in terms of, man, is that a guy that they'll look to bring up at the end of the year and to contribute and to do things. And it's just one of those things where he's just been out of sight, out of mind. So
Right.
the fact that we didn't know that he hadn't been throwing lately, I guess that speaks more to his just how far off the radar he is at this point, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty well. I don't want to say it's reassuring in a way that he's banged up, but that at least provides a little bit more context, and that it just wasn't this complete, you know, he forgot how to throw a baseball kind of thing. He
Well,
lost his
yeah,
pitch like Kenny
and I mean,
Powers.
maybe why not? I mean, the Astros are already, you know, public enemy number one. Why not have a guy like? Why not just go full on Kenny Powers? And anyways,
I guess,
I'm looking to see. I
guess
know Whitley is still rated pretty highly on the. Yeah, he's still rated the top. He's 21st on MLB Top 100 prospects. So
it's
he's
not
still
bad.
viewed as somebody that has that ability, and he's 22. But you look at that guy. I mean, 6'7", 238, coming at you on the mound. Like, that's a guy. If he could put it all together, he obviously has the tools. And now, whether it's been the PED suspension, he's dinged up now, has arm discomfort, dinged up now. Is he ever going to put it together? It seems like one of those guys that just isn't going to put it together for Houston and is going to turn up somewhere else and just ball out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad they're being patient with him.
Yeah.
Glad they're being patient with him. But yeah, like you said, it's just we were talking about these young arms coming through, and I was like, what the hell happened to Whitley? That was a guy that everybody, you know, so
Yeah.
a little bit of a
Yeah.
sidetrack there, but
No, but that's all right. That's a good conversation because it made us at least figure out where that guy's been, because he's been a big name, and I know he's still young, but like I said, like we said earlier, everybody's been calling up the guy if they have any sort of minor league experience, and I guess maybe they would have if he wouldn't have battling some arm trouble, but yeah, we'll see if he can turn that around. I hope he does, man, because we've had high hopes for him for a while, and I hope he can put it all together, not be injured, not be suspended, not locating his pitches in the minors and getting shelled. Put all those
yeah,
tools together, man. You know, apparently I think he looked really good in the fall league. Like they said, he's, you know, but let's see it at the minor league level, and then let's see it at, you know, the pro level. Show me, you know.
exactly. Yep. Well, there should be some time over the next month or so if he can get healthy, we can see potentially what he can do at the major league level. But all right. Well, before we jump into Pandemic Weekly here, I had a birthday this last week or two, however long ago it was,
Hey.
and got a special little for. I know this is something we after we were like, we have to have this on the show. We have to bring this
Yeah.
on. I know we have some wrestling fans that watch, and Jay, I know you got a kick out of this, as much as I did. So we'll cut right to it here. Got a little video of Mick Foley with a birthday message, special birthday message, and I'll go ahead and bring this on.
Hello, my name is Mick Foley, the hardcore legend. Yeah, I swear it's me. It's me, Kerry. Your eyes do not deceive you. The reason I am coming to you on this video is because your dad, Randall McAllister, wanted to do something really special for your 36th birthday on August 10th. And then that fell through. So he got me to do this video.
36.
It's really not
Where'd you get
funny,
that
and it's
from?
the same stupid joke I tell on about 20% of these videos. But it gets a kick out of me, and I figure if I like it, then you will probably like it. Anyway, yes, your dad, Randall McCallister, I'm so sorry, Randall McAllister, wanted to do something really special for your birthday coming up. 36 years old. You're the oldest son, and he took you to see me when you were a child, or at least I think when you were, when you were a child, when you were 10 years old or so. You're watching me and the Undertaker. Maybe you were 12 at the time. Me and the Undertaker tear it down at the Austin, Texas, at the university there. And you are a UT Longhorn grad. Hook 'em horns. Yeah, I had actually changed the phone just so I could do the hook 'em horns. I love it there in Austin. Man, that's a great city and a great college. And I understand, speaking of great, you've got a great sense of humor, and your dad thinks you would really appreciate a shout out from a special guest who's going to say to you, hello to you right now. Right now. What are you doing, man? You're making me look bad. Randall McAllister wants to do something special for his oldest son's birthday, and you're ruining it. Okay, I guess he's not going to do it. He becomes a prima donna. He's a diva at times. Have a nice day, Kerry. Happy birthday. All right, better late than never. Mr. Sacco coming in for the save. Happy birthday, Kerry, and thank you, Randall McAllister, for thinking of me for your oldest son's birthday wishes. Have a nice day. Yeah.
All right. All right.
What a legend.
Yeah, that I don't know where he got that 36 number from, but that's
That's
allegedly.
allegedly.
That's an maybe an alternative truth or something there. I don't know.
Yeah, fuzzy math.
Yeah, math is a little fuzzy. Leap years and whatnots and all those kinds of things.
Yeah,
But
lunar eclipses. That throws it all off.
yeah, it was nice to see Mr. Sacco in the video there. Yeah.
Hey,
little,
so I saw that video way before you did. I knew Randy had gotten that for you. I don't think you knew that. Randy showed me
I
that.
was not aware. No.
Randy got that. He told me he was going to do it, and I was like, oh shit, that is awesome. Totally do it. And then he requested it, and I don't know if he's even told you this. I think he sent it back like the same day. Like
Nice.
It was like so, and but anyway, so yeah, man. Glad you. I think you had a good birthday from the sounds of it, man. And I'm glad that you got a shout out from the hardcore legend himself.
Yeah, man, he looks great.
He does. And for those of you that don't know, Mr. Sacco that's in the background of the shot every week here, this is actually autographed and drawn by Mick Foley. And so Mr. Sacco is on every show, and today he actually made a special appearance as well. So shout out
Absolutely.
to Mr. Sacco.
Yeah, that's what there is. It all ties it in with the show here. You know, nothing is random. You know,
No.
well, sometimes it is, but like it's.
It's mostly random. It's mostly.
Yeah, we get
But
the
whatever.
occasional like circle we can tie together here, but yeah, that was great. I got a huge kick out of that and appreciate you guys getting that put together, and definitely made for a nice. It's funny to see the morning of the birthday. It was great.
Yeah,
So.
all Randy on that one. Shout out to our friend of the show, Randy Rodeo.
Yeah, our Austin music historian, Randy Rodeo. So yeah, nice touch there. But let's move on. Let's get into Pandemic Weekly. What do we have to talk about pandemic-wise that we haven't talked about over the last 18 weeks?
I mean, the Major League Baseball actually had to cancel a series this week, so we're still seeing that. And it wasn't actually players; it was 2 Mets staffers that tested positive. So, but out of an abundance of caution, they decided to cancel the whole series between the Yankees and the Mets. I'm sure they'll make that up. They'll figure it out. At this point, though, they just seem to be piling up these games on the back end of these team schedules, and the 7-inning double headers that they're playing. It's extremely weird to watch a Major League Baseball game end in 7 innings, but they're making this happen, and they're just forging through it. Major League Baseball just seems to be putting their head down and forging through it no matter what. Just, we're going to play baseball, and it's happening. They're making it happen right now. So
the Mets get their turn to have a week off or whatever it is. The Cardinals had plenty of time off, and the Marlins had time off. And it'd be nice if some American League teams actually got to get a little extra time off too, instead of always having to play full baseball games every day. Maybe they would enjoy some 7-inning games, a little breather. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it I don't want to say they've got, like, MLB's got it under control, but it seems to have slowed down a little bit over the last week or two in terms of how the virus was kind of spreading amongst the different teams. So we'll see. The New York teams, it's a little different though. I feel like if the Yankees got it, or something, that maybe Manfred would then shut down the season, or just give them the trophy. So
hey, you guys, Yankees, you're so deserving. Here's the title. Cancel the season. Okay, you're the Yankees.
Yeah.
Or the Dodgers maybe too, because they, especially since the Dodgers can't ever seem to find a way to win one on their own. They can get there, but they sure can't ever win one. But whatever.
Well, they got it. The Padres are creeping up on them in those division standings. I think they're now about 2 games back of the Dodgers, which we talked about the Padres earlier, how hot they've been. So we'll see. But
there's not a chance I want to face the Padres in the first round of the playoffs.
No, not at all.
Not
at any
a
point
chance.
in the playoffs, honestly. They're really, really good. That's a scary team. But so nothing else really. I don't think, JD, got anything else on Major League Baseball in the pandemic. I don't think there's been really any other notable news. Strasburg might be out long term. It's not a COVID related thing, but carpal tunnel syndrome as a pitcher sounds awful.
Does not sound great. So yeah, man, no, I hope the Astros can keep it up. An 8-game win streak is just what they needed to sort of get that monkey off their back. I feel like they can breathe a little bit now. That maybe they'll loosen up. Maybe this will trigger Altuve into just getting back to himself. I don't know how long Bregman's going to be out. It seems like that could be a tricky one. But we'll see. Toro's going to have to keep showing up big. Of all people, Miles Straw in the lineup every day has proven to be something that has worked over the last week or so. If he can keep it up, that's great. But we just got to keep it going. Ted, got to keep it going. He's been great. He had 3 triples in 2 days and a home run in there too.
Yeah, he's been piping hot.
It's been nice to see Tucker's skills translate at the major league level. It's very nice to see it.
Yeah, it seems he's starting to get it. It's kind of like with the Whitley thing. There was always the discussion about his talent, but it was, when was he going to put it together? He'd get called up and be with the Astros for a series and get a chance to play. And I know, like, in the postseason, he would come in as a pinch hitter in some spots and just never seemed to really put it together. But now that consistency is starting to show, and you can see that natural talent start to go, and you go, okay, yeah, there is something there.
Well, when you're in the lineup every day at the major league level, and it allows you to get into some sort of rhythm, even if you're hitting 8th, get into a rhythm. He'd never been given that opportunity to play every day for any stretch of time. So now that you're seeing it, shocking. He was the 30-30 guy in the Pacific Coast League. Like, that doesn't – 30-30 guys in the minors don't grow on trees. Like, he is a
No.
ball player. So to give him the everyday at-bats and to see him finally able to have the skills translate, it's just 3 triples and a home run in a 2-day stretch. Like, that's
pretty good.
That's okay to do.
Yeah.
That's an all right achievement.
Yeah.
And the talent is there, and I'm super happy, especially at the right time for this ball club, for Tucker to have come around and put it together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jay, you got the shirt on today.
Yeah.
It's NBA playoffs are here. I know we discussed briefly last week about the San Antonio Spurs streak coming to an end. We didn't have a chance to fully preview the NBA postseason, but let's jump right into it. I mean, as we stand right now, the Rockets have a 2-0 lead over Oklahoma City in the first round. They've looked pretty good, which, considering that the Lakers lost their opening game to Portland as the 1 seed. What was it? Who else? The top seeded teams around the NBA have not looked great, minus Toronto. Toronto's looked really solid. Milwaukee lost their opener.
Yeah.
But they haven't looked great. Like, it's just kind of across the board. You know, the Clippers lost to the Mavericks in game 2 of that series. So for the Rockets to look as steady and ready to go as they are, I think is a good sign. And I think they're in a good spot. What do you think?
Oh yeah, especially no Russell Westbrook.
Right.
Who by the way has been an active participant on this, even though he hasn't dressed. The guy's been coaching his teammates. The guy's been talking to referees in a good way. The guy's been in the huddle. It's just one of those things when you hear about we used to hear about Russell Westbrook not being a great teammate maybe, and I don't see that at all at this point. He's really shown to be the exact opposite of that. But even just with his presence on the sideline, but no Russell Westbrook on the court. Harden only had 21 in game 2. 6 other guys went for double figures. That lets me know that they're firing on all cylinders right now. And whatever they're doing is working. They look sharp. They look, as a team, they look good. This isn't Harden dribbling around for 20 seconds and then firing up a 3. They're passing the ball. They're rotating on defense. And they're looking really, really good right now against a team in the Thunder who I know some people thought might be a candidate to win this series.
Yeah. I think the Rockets are going to –
one of those shocker guys, one of those shocker candidates.
Yeah, I think the Rockets are going to handle this series pretty well. I think the difficulty level jumps up pretty quickly if the favorites win. You're then talking about the Lakers, Clippers, and Denver is kind of that – the difficulty ramps up quite a bit after this. But again, these teams are, they're struggling a little bit. The Lakers, they did not look good at all with the restart. And I know you can kind of say, they already were kind of the number 1 seed. They didn't have a ton to play for when the league started back up. But I think there's something to say about teams that have been scratching and clawing their way through and getting into the postseason. And the Lakers didn't have to do that. And they look rusty. Where Portland, the opponent that they're playing in the first round, had to fight their way in. This was a team that was, I remember when we were talking about the bubble, players opting out, all those things, that Portland it was Damian Lillard, right? Early on, that was like, what's the point of me coming back to play when we have no shot of making the playoffs?
Right.
They made the playoffs and they beat the Lakers in game 1.
There have only been a couple of players maybe better than Damian Lillard in this bubble.
Would you even say that many?
I mean, probably not. The guy, he's been lights out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, everything that he's done. Devin Booker played really well. Who's the guy I'm thinking on Indiana? But there's a couple of guys that have stepped up and have played well. Damian Lillard has been just the best guy, I guess, in the bubble. Just he's and since then, and you see it in game 1. finally Lakers come back in game 2. I don't think LeBron looks great. I think there is a rust factor there, Kerry, like you said, and we'll see what if they can get going. That's tonight. Lakers and Trailblazers tonight on
game
ABC.
3 tonight, right? Yeah.
Yeah, on ABC tonight for those of you that will be tuning in. Rockets are at 5 o'clock tonight, so Rockets get the middle game or one of. It's just basketball all day long, man. It's just I love it.
Yeah,
I love how they've set this up, and it should be something that they should just look at doing. Period. I mean, for
sure.
It's great to have this stuff.
And it's like we'll get to the hockey in a second, similar to that, and just how.
Right.
Like, how do you go back from this? Like,
I don't know. That's a great question.
But yeah, on the Lakers real quick. And I wonder, you talk about that rust, like, this is one of those things where if this is an issue of the Lakers, like LeBron and Anthony Davis and the Lakers, like not taking this serious enough in the first round, like this kind of mentality of like, oh, well, we'll get it going when we get into the second round. This is kind of a warm up thing. The way the Blazers have been playing, they've been good enough to win this series. This is the kind of thing where if they're not awake and ready to go, Portland can do the unthinkable here. I don't know. I'm not going to pick them to do that, but there's a difference for me if this is an issue of rust versus attitude. If it's rust, LeBron and the Lakers are going to be fine in this round. If it's attitude, there could be an issue.
I think tonight we're going to see LeBron James at his best. I think we'll see Anthony Davis at his best. I think the Lakers are going to handle their business tonight.
How far do you think Portland can push this series?
I think it can go 6. I think they can get another win out of this, just because of how well they're playing.
Yeah.
But tonight's a statement game for LeBron in prime time on Saturday night on ABC. It's time. This is when he is his best. The spotlight's on him. He'll shine tonight in some form or another, and I think the Lakers win big tonight. But I mean, it's it hasn't been. They haven't looked great so far, but I think tonight is the statement game for LA.
Sticking with NBA quickly here. Do you think the Mavericks have a chance to pull off a series upset over the Clippers? I know, was it Clippers won last night? I think to take a 2-1 lead in that series. They seem to be coming around. I think that's another one that they can maybe make this thing go 6. But I think the Mavericks are too young. They're talented, but too young, and the Clippers are just loaded. So
it was an impressive win. That game 2 win was impressive. And I texted my buddy Travis, who's the if we have somebody on to talk Mavericks, it might be him. He's that knowledgeable of the club. And I texted him after that game and I said, hey, that's a big win. Even if you don't win the whole series, like that's a big win for a club this young to go in there and to show that they can do it on a big stage and to beat a team. The Clippers are excellent. They are top tier of this conference, of this league. And it's just, I don't think they have enough in the tank. I don't think they have enough to overcome the Clippers' talent, but I do think that's another one that could go 6. And you'll see the Mavericks aren't going anywhere for a while.
No.
That's going to be a team that will continue to develop that young core. Porzingis, people forget how good of a ball player Kristaps Porzingis is because he was injured for a while. The Knicks were horrible when he was up there.
Just being in that organization, just being in that Knicks organization alone is enough to set you back. And so, yeah,
he had the nickname the Unicorn for a reason. The guy Porzingis is one of those unique talents, and then you put him alongside a guy who, if you had to ask me to pick 3 people I would want to build a team around, Luka Doncic would be one of those people.
Oh yeah.
So that's that core and what they have going for them in Dallas will be great for years to come. I just don't think this is their time.
No, and that's the thing. Like, this is part of that learning process, right? Where they're gonna, you go and get 2 wins or something against the Clippers at this stage of that club's development, and it's just going to pay dividends for them over the next few years. Um, don't necessarily like saying that because it's the Mavericks, but
Right.
but it's just kind of funny. It's kind of hard to root against that team right now with the players that are there. Doncic, you talk about like what a likable superstar, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to be a force. Real quick on the East, um, do you see any? I'm kind of thinking that Toronto is going to do this again. They're gonna be the team to come out of the East, and which
And they
is
look so good right
amazing to
now.
me. Amazing given that Kawhi is gone. All these things, like, this is not the championship team from last year, but they're playing so well. And I, how do you pick against Toronto at this point? I'm not. I think if I'm picking right now, I'm thinking Toronto wins the East. I might, but just from the consistency standpoint, they're so good.
You look at a team like that. I think it's a big shout out to, or it really speaks to how good of a coach Nick Nurse is for them to be this consistent. I mean, I don't know. It's just they're a good team. It's amazing to see, to watch after losing Kawhi Leonard like that, and to, I don't know, man. They're playing so well right now. It's hard to see. I could definitely see them coming out of that conference.
Well, we'll move along here a little bit. Move into NHL stuff where the first round is over. The first round is over. The second round starts tonight. The Dallas Stars knocked out the Calgary Flames in the first round with a 4-2 series win. They are now rewarded with getting the Colorado Avalanche, who are just absolutely on fire right now. I think 2 games against the Coyotes in their first round, they scored 7 goals. They're just firing on all cylinders. But the Stars seem to have woken up a little bit after sleepwalking through the round robin seeding round. And Calgary was a team that had to scrap their way in. So not a slouch. And the Stars are doing this without their number 1 goalie in net. So I think if they could get Ben Bishop back in goal, and they can make this a series against Colorado. I'm not picking the Stars to beat Colorado in this series. I think Colorado's too deep and they're playing way too well. But it's a nice little revival of the old, the late 90s, early 2000s. It seemed like every year the Stars and Avalanche were meeting up, and one of those teams would get to the Western Finals, and the Red Wings in that mix too. So a little bit of nostalgia there. But
When Patrick Waugh was between the pipes for the Avalanche back in those days. See,
yep.
that was when I remember really watching my most hockey that I ever watched was during that time frame. And I remember some classic battles between those two teams, and it'll be cool to watch. I as I mentioned before, I usually amp up my hockey viewing during the playoffs, and sure enough, I found myself last night watching Vancouver finish off that series against the Blues, and it's always fun to watch. I always find myself enjoying it when I make the time to watch it, and playoff hockey is just, it's so great. Even in this setting, even in the environment that they're in right now, they've done a great job of getting viewers like me who usually just hop on during this time, of giving that the best experience possible. And then the hockey's been good too.
Yeah, and it's been getting better. It's
Yeah.
You can tell that maybe it was a little weird at first for the players to kind of get that playoff intensity going in an empty building, but that doesn't seem to be the issue anymore. You're starting to see kind of the bad blood emerge between some of these teams in the series, which makes for great playoff hockey. I know you mentioned watching the Vancouver game. That's a young team that seems to be putting it together. Elias Peterson, we talk about Svechnikov from Carolina, the kind of talent that he brings. Peterson is that same type of player for Vancouver, that if you're watching the Canucks, you go, he just pops off the screen. An incredible talent. But yeah, Vancouver, kind of the young Don't know if they're quite ready for primetime type team, and they get the now number 1 seed Vegas Golden Knights in the next round. And going to have to go with Vegas just based on experience there, what they've done the last couple seasons. But that'll be a good one. It's going to be Philly versus the New York Islanders in the East, which is going to be incredibly entertaining, I think. And then Tampa Bay and Boston, probably the 2 best teams in the East, now meet in the second round. Boston is in this position because they, like the Stars, slept walk through the round robin situation, but they turned it on against Carolina. So if I had to make picks, I'm going not Dallas. I'm going Colorado, Vegas, Boston, Philly.
Earlier offline before we started going today, I mentioned that the Vancouver team, the arc reminds me of the same arc that like if they could go on and now beat Las Vegas, that'll be a tall order for them. But if they would just be beating these teams that maybe that people thought, maybe it wasn't their time, like you said. But like the Rockets in '95, when the year after they won the championship, and then they weren't having a great year, and they made adjustments midseason, obviously, and then they went on as just they were the 6th seed that year when they won the championship, and they had to beat all the best teams, like the 3 seed, the 2 seed, the 1 seed, and then in the final. So that arc reminds me of that. If Vancouver can sort of carry that, because they're playing as well as anybody right now in the bubbles. So and that was the same thing that happened with the Rockets in that year. You just get hot at the right time. Same thing you said with this shortened baseball season. The team that's playing the hottest is going to be the team to beat. In the NFL, an example of that is when the Giants won the Super Bowl that year as a 6th seed. This Vancouver team, to me, just watching them a few times, they pop out as a team, as somebody that is fresh, is eager, is willing to go the extra mile. And those are teams, when you look at these, like a 1-5, what turns into a 1-5 playoff matchup, that can come through it because they're playing so well right now as a unit, can pull off this upset.
Yeah, they could. I mean, Vegas is deep, but similar to St. Louis, who Vancouver just knocked out, Vegas has been making deep playoff runs in their entire existence. I mean, they were in the Stanley Cup final their first season. They had a deep playoff run last year. Here they are again. But St. Louis was the defending champ. When the season was put on hold, they were the number 1 seed in the West.
Mm-hmm.
They look tired. They look worn out. I think that catches up with teams at a certain point. Vancouver doesn't have that problem. Is this where Vegas, the fatigue starts to stack up a little bit? It's going to be interesting to see. I think Vancouver will make it a series. I don't know if I think Vegas is going to be too much for them to overcome at this point. But kind of like we were talking about with the Mavericks in a way, like this is one of those things that's just a building block for Vancouver. They're getting a nice young core of players there. They're exciting to watch. So that's going to be entertaining. I think the East, I think you can pick any one of those teams out of the East to end up being the East champ over there. And that's about as well matched and evenly matched across those 4 teams as you could possibly get. And that's going to be a real battle over there. It'll be fun to watch.
Is there a sport with more parity in the playoffs than the NHL in terms of lower seeded teams beating higher seeded teams? In the NHL, do you hear more often of like a lower seeded team that's just playing, that's on fire right now, beating a team? Because in my mind, I feel like I hear like an 8 seed beating a 1 seed in the NHL fairly recently. And like some of these lower seeds, at least in this bubble, having an easier time with it than some of the higher seeds. So in your opinion, is that something that happens more in hockey, like a lower seed beating a higher seed, or?
Well, it's really interesting because this is kind of a return to the old format. The true kind of like 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, and then reseed after each round. the way that the NHL has been doing it for the last few years has been the division champs will play a wild card team. And then, so you would have, it would still be 8 teams from each conference that qualify, but you have 2 divisions. The division champ would then get one of the 2 wild card teams that qualify, but then the 2 divisional teams would play each other. So there wasn't, it made for good rivalries early in the playoff season because it would be divisional rivals in the first rounds and second round. Then you would get to but the problem with that is you'd have something like the Capitals versus Penguins in the second round, when that's something that should have been like in the Eastern Final.
That's a conference final type of a matchup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye, Finley. You want to come be on the show real quick? Hurry up. Come here, big boy. We're going to have a special guest appearance today on the show. Finley.
Hi.
Who is
Hey,
that?
buddy.
Remember, that's Kerry, right? Say hi to Kerry.
Hi, Kerry.
Hey, dude.
We're about to go to the haircut place.
Oh, yeah. Finman's getting a haircut.
Well, that sounds fun.
Oh.
I don't know what that feeling's like for like the last year.
Yeah, we're going to mask up, right, Finley? Going to put on your mask and be safe, right?
Right.
Okay, dude.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye, Kerry.
See you, Finn. Have fun at the haircut.
Thank you.
All right, dude.
I'm not in your garage.
Oh, all right, dude. See you later, Bubby.
Bye.
See ya.
Always nice to have guest appearances on the show.
We've had a lot of guest appearances today. We had Denise Sullivan. We've had Mick Foley, Finn,
Yeah. Mr. Sacco twice.
yeah, we've all kinds of stuff. Well, no, that's some good NHL talk. Let's, so, oh, by the way, if people want to, if they're interested in watching tonight, Stars versus Avalanche, that series kicks off. I think that's 7:00 on NBC. I should have that ready, but just so everybody knows.
If you've got the double side-by-side TV like I used to have back in the day, this is a good night to have a basketball game and a hockey game on at the same time. It's a great time of the year to have that multiple TV setup, and I would even encourage flipping back and forth a little bit. It's a great time to be a sports fan. And there's some good ball or puck being played right now. So I know I'm soaking as much of it in as I can. Oh, okay. I remember something that I wanted to real quick on Major League Baseball, since we're talking about people watching and tuning in. I saw something that the ratings, the spike in ratings, the small spike in ratings has been attributed to more women and children watching baseball than the normal demographics.
Interesting.
So I wonder, I'll be curious to see now how if that translates over to any other sports in the playoffs as well, or not just in the playoffs, but in general, if the women and children demographic rises to that degree for them as well. So
that's
anyway,
fascinating.
I just thought
I'd be
about that
curious
since
to
we
know
were
that
talking
too.
about tuning in for multiple sports at once, and hockey's sucked me back in. It does every year with the playoffs, man. So it'll be fun to watch. And I'm guessing Doc Emmerich will be on the call tonight on NBC.
I think so. Yeah, and I was able to confirm it's 7:00 Central tonight on NBC, not NBCSN. So you only need an antenna to watch tonight's game on NBC. So Stars versus Avalanche, Game 1. Hope it's a good one, but Colorado's pretty damn good. So we'll see. But all right, well let's move on here a little bit. We got some NCAA stuff to talk about. I know we kind of hit that pretty heavy last week. I don't feel like a ton has changed since then. Big Ten and Pac-12 are still done for the year. Now they're kind of discussing talking about a spring season. We'll see what comes of that. I think we've discussed here how that's just going to cause chaos. You're going to award. How does that work when the playoff already happens when the Pac-12 and Big Ten start? But we'll let the people at the NCAA that get paid millions of dollars to figure that part out, but because it's a mess.
I don't even, yeah. It just, it's just, for me, it's so irresponsible to play football in the spring and then turn around and play again in the fall. It's completely irresponsible. I don't think I don't know. It's money, man. And I get, this is a business, right? These are businesses. They're treating it like businesses. They're trying to make money. They're doing everything they can, holding out every last hope to try to recoup something of a football season. And I understand it from that perspective. But from every other perspective, does it make sense to play football right now with
No.
18 to 22-year-old non-paid football players?
No. And you had the quarterback for Georgia State. I know it's Georgia State. You know, we're not talking about a big Power 5 school, but quarterback for Georgia State opt out for this coming season because of a heart condition that he developed due to having COVID. People go, oh, these are otherwise healthy players and everything. They're not at risk. Well, they're not until they catch it, and then they are at risk. And now he's got a heart condition, and he hopes to be back for 2021. There's that aspect of it, but then also you talk about the money, and that's essentially why UT is going against all other forms of advice and consider, they're going to have 25,000 people in the stadium here in a couple weeks. Right as we're kind of getting this thing, we were pushing these hospitalization numbers down here in Austin, and we want to put 25,000 into a stadium on every Saturday. Like,
I talked to Mike, our Longhorn insider, Mike Holland. I talked to him last night. He mentioned that they finally got the call about their season tickets. And they moved them over, and they're now in the upper deck.
Where were they at before?
I believe they were lower deck, like 30-yard line, maybe 35.
Yeah, they were in a good spot.
And now they've moved them a little bit farther in towards the middle of the field, but now they're in the upper deck. They've had season tickets for 30 years.
Yeah.
Maybe longer, and they got moved to the upper deck. So that just shows you right there. They are moving people around. They're making adjustments to how they're going to seat people in this stadium. I don't know if it's enough to make me feel like it's just knowing that they've been making adjustments. I don't know if it's enough to make me feel like it's remotely safe.
No.
But they're in their eyes, they're making an effort, I guess, to do it as safely as possible. So it's
better than what Florida State did this week. Said, like, yeah, tailgating's totally fine. Florida State announcing, like, yeah, tailgating will be totally fine for games this year, which I guess on one hand, it sounds bad, Florida State just outright saying it, but, like, how are other schools going to police it to begin with, kind of thing?
Right.
If Texas said tailgating's not allowed, what are they going to be able to really do to enforce that? Where at least Florida State perhaps is saying, like, yeah, we're going to allow it, but it's going to be on our terms. I don't know quite the details of it, but at least, I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to just completely throw them under the bus for it without knowing the details. But
well, you would have to think that there would be some sort of parameters on it, but knowing it being in the state of Florida, probably not. If you tell me that I pull up to somewhere close to campus and here in Austin, park my truck, literally get out of my truck or sit in the back of my truck with a cooler of beer and my family, you're going to tell me I can't do that out there? That I'm just doing like the most extreme example of how do you police that?
Right.
How do you police people hanging out? Oh, this is my entire family. We all live together. Well, if that's one of the parameters, how are you going to enforce that? Right. I don't
Yeah, there's almost a little bit of hypocrisy in it with like if they were say like, hey, well, this group of people you can't congregate in the parking lot and have beers before the game. Oh, well, but we're going to all be sitting together in that upper deck.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's
How do
allowed.
you? Yeah, we're not going to let you congregate there, but we're going to totally allow you to do that here because you're
You
paying
paid
us
to.
money for those
Yeah.
tickets, and we'll allow you to do it. This is the kind of thing I'm talking where we've been discussing, man. It's blatant hypocrisy for money. Money. This is what we're talking. We discussed it last week. We probably discussed it the week before and the week before, and we will forever until the end of time.
I think 18
That it's
weeks is what we're officially at.
right. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. 18
That
in
we're
a
on
row.
record. That we're on record at least.
Right.
Um,
If you
yeah,
and if you can go back and find those the two lost episodes buried in SoundCloud somewhere, that the early days
I need to
of
go
the
check
of the
those. I
show.
need to. Maybe Denise commented on those, looking for help, and we missed the
Oh no, Denise.
Denise Sullivan. Are you okay? Oh man,
Well, and
good stuff.
also, okay, I don't know if you saw this, Kerry. Urban Meyer went on this rant about the Big 12 and not having anybody in defensive players in the draft. So he goes, between 2008 and 2020, 12 years, you've had 2 first-rounders on defense, which I didn't realize it was that bad.
That is
That the
that
Big
I
12 in that entire time had only had 2 first-rounders on
between when
defense.
2008 and 2020.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
awful. I had no idea that it was that bad.
So basically, he's just commenting on the state of the Big 12 and defense or lack thereof. But in that rant, he also says, when he goes, it's terrible, it needs to change, he goes, I think Chris Ash going to Texas, he's not a good defensive coach. He's an elite defensive coach with an elite reputation and can develop players. You can say
Shit, I
whatever you
hope
want
so.
about Urban Meyer. Yeah, you can say whatever you want about Urban Meyer. And we have, I think on this show, we've discussed Urban
We'll have
Meyer. But
plenty more to say about Urban Meyer as time goes on.
yes, we will. But as a talent evaluator of coaches, of
Oh yeah,
players, so to hear him say that about Chris Ash, it makes me, it's got to make a Texas football fans at least say, okay, maybe we've got the guy here. It makes you at least feel like maybe, okay, if you were already liking Chris Ash, again, no matter how you feel about Urban Meyer, just the fact that he would be willing to go on the record and say that about him, I think it's a very positive thing for the Texas football program.
well, it is. It is, and this is the first. I did not catch this. This is the first I've heard of it. There is also the cynic in me that says, given Tom Herman's relationship with Urban Meyer, that this is one of those. If the defense looks great, it's because of Chris Ash. If the defense doesn't look great this season under Chris Ash, it's Tom Herman's fault, because how can they be that bad with such a great defensive coordinator like Ash? Like, it seems like this is, just the way that, I think, what was it, last season when Urban Meyer had his comments about the Texas program and Tom Herman and all that stuff, and then, the fairy dust quotes and all those things. Maybe it was the season before, I don't know. But just to me, it almost seems like this is just the Urban Meyer setup to just continue to bash Tom Herman if things don't work out, but then also not give him credit if things do work out and the defense looks better. Again,
Well,
that's
either
just the
way,
cynic in me to kind of say like, well, this is just Urban Meyer just again trying to poke at Tom Herman and his program. But
I think it could be a little bit of both, though, Kerry. I think he can truly feel like Chris Ash is that elite talent, and to
yeah,
call him out by name, and to because I think Alex Grinch was the only other defensive coach that he mentioned for the entire conference. So when
who
we
did
talk,
fairly well in his first season at OU, like that was an
absolutely, yeah,
improvement. Yeah.
absolutely. So I think it could be a little bit of both, but I like knowing that that Chris Ash is that well thought of, because as we've brought in these coordinators, whether they've been on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, we've seen this constant revolving door of these guys that have come in with what we thought were these pedigrees, what we were told and made to believe were these strong backgrounds and histories of success. So Chris Ash coming in, and that was also probably, like you said, a byproduct of whoever's been the head coach at the time, whether it was Mac at the end of his tenure or Charlie, or now we've seen Tom Herman struggle a little bit finding the right guy to fill the staff. We've said for a while now, and Tom Herman has pointed to 2020 for a while now as being the year that the Texas football program, that we should look at the Texas football program taking the step into being an elite program. Herman's pointed at that. We've heard that. We've heard the year 2020 now for a while. Now with Chris Ash in place, it's put up or shut up time for me. And we've said for a while now, we'll learn a lot about Herman as a head coach with how he handles this year.
Well, that's a perfect. I know we had one more little thing to mention about NCAA but about TCU starting quarterback with his season being in jeopardy due to a health condition. We'll kind of see how that plays out. But that's a perfect segue. I want to stay on that point there to go ahead and jump into the We're Back segment.
Yeah. We're back.
Let's jump right into it here, because I think the first thing that I had that I wanted to hit on for this goes perfectly with that. Texas is playing a 10-game season this year, 9 conference games, 1 non-conference game. As of now, Vegas has the over-under on wins for Texas this year at 7.5. Given what you just said about 2020 being the put up or shut up year for Texas, 7 to 8 wins with this situation, to me, does not cut it. That won't. I think we hit on this with Mike about what our kind of expectations. I know we'll have our big preview show as we get closer and kind of go through the schedule, but there's no LSU on the schedule anymore. So that's one of those ones where you go, if Texas goes to Baton Rouge and loses that game, there's no shame in that.
You could understand it, right?
Yeah, and I know LSU's kind of restocking the cabinet after that historic year last year, but still, it's a trip to Baton Rouge. It's a good program.
Night game,
great
I'm
team.
sure it would have night game in Baton Rouge with yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So they're going to win the non-conference game against against UTEP. You're talking 9 other games that Texas could lose 2 to 3 of those. To me, that's extremely disappointing. A 7-3 season, or 8-2.
Well, 8-2 is the minimum, right? I think hitting the over there, just getting over that number of 7.5 is the bare ass minimum of what Tom Herman has to get done this year, in my opinion. 7 wins, that ain't it, Chief. That's not the expectation that we've been building towards for 2020. So we've talked about whether or not you get a pass in a pandemic. With what he has at his disposal, talent-wise, anything less than 8-2 is absolutely unacceptable. But I am willing to go to be. I'm okay with 8 wins this year in this environment. But that's the bare minimum for me in what he has to accomplish.
Yeah, I just have a hard time finding that second loss for me. Like, OU is OU. I know, they lose guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Hurts, and they've, but it's Lincoln Riley. They're going to restock, but so OU, that one's a toss up for me.
Yeah.
But, this is a team that dominated, or looked really, really good against Oklahoma State last season. I know people are kind of tabbing Oklahoma State as a conference favorite this year. I don't know if I agree with that. The fans aren't going to be in the stands in Stillwater.
Before.
Yeah. And Sanders is going into his second year as quarterback. The tape's out on him now. Who knows what the mentality of the players are with Mike Gundy after everything that's happened this offseason, Chuba Hubbard threatening to not play. Where are their minds at? I just don't, and especially if they go to Stillwater and there's no fans in the stadium.
Right.
Like, other than that, I don't, with senior quarterback, the influx of talent on this roster, 9-1, I get that, but like 8-2 tells me that, you probably lost to Oklahoma, but then there's probably one loss on there that fans are going to really look at and go, how the hell did they lose that? What happened there? Like, and I know that's kind of been Tom Herman's thing, is he's been good for at least one of those since he was at Houston, honestly.
Absolutely. Even when he had a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback in Houston, they found a way to lose a game late in that season. But I just going to Kansas State for the last game of the season.
In December.
I don't care if there's fans in this.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's fans
Yeah.
in the stands or not, because I actually think by December, I'm hoping that by December, the numbers are where they are to where we can see, like, where you and I can have a discussion about why going up there to Manhattan in December is going to be a problem. I hope we're to that point with this pandemic. But either way, what Kansas State, like that just mention Kansas State football to a Longhorn fan, and that, that's the
Yeah,
get it off of me, sort of a
one
feeling.
win in Manhattan in the last 18 years.
So that, to me, I don't care what the situation is, to shake that juju off at the end of the season, that is going to, again, speak to where Tom Herman is as a head coach. We'll know a lot about Tom Herman as a head coach before we get to that last game against Kansas State. But I just do not like that going to Manhattan, Kansas in December at all, to be honest with you.
No,
And
not
the
a
game
fan.
before that against Iowa State, that's not a team I want to play after. That's a team that at that point in the year, they could have put it together. They might not start off out, but Iowa State is a team this year for me that I feel like is going to find a way to put together some wins that maybe at the beginning of the season people weren't thinking that they could pull off. That's a tough couple of games at the end of the season for Texas if they're not firing on all cylinders like we've seen in the past. So those are games that they should win, absolutely. But we'll know where Tom Herman is by the end by the time we get there. And do you see? I mean, Baylor. I'm not worried about Baylor this year, although I don't know. I mean, I just don't see if he finds a way to lose 3 games this year. That's a huge problem.
I completely agree. I
And
completely
for
agree.
you, it seems like that number is 2, right?
I think so. Yeah. This is everything that we've been hearing about. This is the chance to make a playoff. This is a chance to win the conference. In this conference, 2 losses is not going to get, I mean, at least I don't see it, get you into the league title game. It's just not.
Right.
And that's the thing. OU, with reloading the way that they are, they're not going to lose more than one game. I don't think. I mean, maybe they lose 2, even with, new quarterback and all this thing. I don't know. But, last year there was all these ugly losses and near losses, like the Kansas game that maybe should have been a loss. There was, the Iowa State screw up that led to that loss. All these things, but all we've been hearing about is how talented the team is. Well, now they've revamped the coaching staff. Now you've got a Bijan Robinson. You've got all these, these new talented players, all these things. Outside of pandemic related things, I don't see where the excuse is to lose more than 1 game. And that only one is because it's OU. They're going to be more talented by far than any other opponent that they see on the schedule. This new coaching staff is supposed to make up for those shortfalls that Tom Herman has had over the last few seasons, whether it's game management, personnel management, not being able to stop a jet sweep, any of those kinds of things. That, but that's where it really is the put up or shut up time. If this team goes 8-2, that sounds great, but in reality, they were probably going to. If you extrapolate that to a full schedule, then it's probably a 9-3 team
Right.
in what their original schedule was going to be. And how many of us, or how many Texas fans would go 9-3 with this team, with a senior quarterback, with a fairly favorable schedule? Like, that would have been disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, this is the year that we truly because 8-2 ain't back.
No.
It's not. And they got to be back this year. Whatever back means to you as a Texas football fan, Tom Herman needs to make sure that they're back to that. If that means you're playing for a conference title, okay. If the expectation right now is to just be playing for conference titles, which I could understand that, given the circumstances of the program over the last decade. If you just need to see Tom Herman back to winning or competing for conference championships, playing for conference titles every year, that's the bar this year. Texas needs to be in a conference championship game, and I think 8-2. I think that this is going to be a weird year, man. Like I don't think anybody's going undefeated. I don't think anybody. There may just be like 4 or 5 teams at the end of this that are 8-2 that have 2 conference losses, and I just feel like it's going to be a funky year, man. But
I do too, and I think
Texas
the way that it looks matters too, though, and that's the thing. I think it's like when you look at the win-loss record last season, people go, okay, well, you start going, okay, well, they beat Kansas. That Kansas game was to me, that was probably the ugliest game of the season. I know they won it, but it was ugly and it didn't look good. And, that's the thing. Like, I feel like how it looks when you watch the games, I think that matters as well. I think if they go 8-2 during the regular season, how do those 2 losses look? Is that they beat OU and then lose to, Baylor and Iowa State? That feels different. It depends on how those look. Do they go to Kansas State and just get stomped by a team that they have no, place getting stomped by? But I do completely agree. It's going to be a really funky season, and I think I have to be careful about trying to apply expectations of what would be a normal football season to this team, and have to remind myself of that. But it's
yes and no, because we're talking about a football season that's going to be played. It's fair to have expectations, man. Like, it's fair to expect a certain level of success from a football coach that's being paid as much as Tom Herman is. So, I don't think, we need to remember that, but I don't think anything that you've said is even remotely close to being like, I don't know, man. Like, no, this is all reasonable. These are all reasonable expectations that we have of Tom Herman right now.
No, I think if anything, instead of maybe hinging things on win-loss record, I think what you said earlier is perfect, in that if Texas is not playing in a conference championship game, that's a failure. Yep. That's a failure, given the circumstances. And of course, let's say, okay, well, Sam Ehlinger makes it through the season, all those kinds of things. I know you can have caveats everywhere, but
right.
I think the expectation should be at minimum, playing for a league title.
Yeah, that's every year, period, but especially now at this point in Tom Herman's stint as a head coach at the University of Texas, it should absolutely be every single year. Even if it doesn't look good, even if you lose a couple you shouldn't, even if something crazy happens, like, the University of Texas should regularly be playing for conference championships every year. That's the expectation when you're paying as much money as you do for a head coach.
Yep.
So that is, I think that's reasonable. I agree with that. And to get there, Kerry, you got to have some ball players. You got to have the Jimmies and the Joes. We've talked about Shamar Turner on this show before. The guy that's heavily, basically his list of 5 is Texas and a bunch of SEC schools.
Yeah.
Well, he's visiting. He's on campus this weekend. He's coming by to take a visit, see what things are looking like. Just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that while we were talking about the Horns. He was going to be on campus this weekend. But the bigger thing for me, Kerry, is our guy Quinn Ewers, the number 1 quarterback in the country that committed to Texas. And we talked last week with Mike a lot about whether the Pied Piper effect would be in play here with a guy of this caliber. Well, last night, turns out he's playing catch and running routes and doing things with some pretty talented receivers in the 2022 class. So we got Faison Wilson, who committed a little bit before Ewers actually did. But then you look at the other guy, who's a 4-star receiver. But then you look at the other 2 guys who are currently uncommitted to any schools. Armani Winfield, 4-star receiver out of Louisville, who's currently at Rivals, has him as the number 95 player in the country, and he's the 13th ranked player in the state. And then you got Evan Stewart, was there also a 4-star receiver out of Frisco, who's ranked number 79 in the nation and is number 11 overall player in the state. Kerry, man, are we seeing this happen before our eyes? Is the whole Pied Piper effect? Is Ewers going to be Vince Young in that regard, not only in being ranked that highly, but also is this going to be considered one of the greatest recruiting classes? I know we're early. I know this is, and I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but can this guy, early on at least, does it seem like he's the type of guy that can turn out one of those recruiting classes for us?
Yeah, I think I definitely think so. I think this is the Quinn Ewers commitment is, I think, bigger than just a 1-class Pied Piper effect. I think one of the issues Texas has had over the last decade, wandering in the wilderness, has been DFW recruiting. It was one of those things that OU was able to reassert themselves in the Metroplex. Texas really struggled with DFW recruiting. And I think when you start looking at these schools, Louisville, Frisco, you start seeing South Lake Carroll, you start seeing that this is the opportunity for Texas to really reassert itself in DFW in terms of recruiting. I think the Jaquindon Jackson recruitment, I think, was looked at in a similar fashion. I know not as prominent, but he was a guy that had relationships all throughout DFW. And then losing Rashad Samples, who was on the staff, to SMU, which is part of the reason Savion Byrd is looking at SMU instead of the guy that was considered a shoe-in for Texas. You lose Rashad Samples to SMU. But I think this is the one that people go, oh, this is, finally a big name Dallas guy is going to go to Texas after however many years. I think that Ewers is the kind of guy with the profile that this is where Texas can really rebuild those relationships in DFW. And whether it's at places like Allen, Louisville, Frisco, South Lake Carroll, all these places. We already know Tom Herman's strong in Houston with the relationship there. But, there's other battles to be fought in Houston. But if you really want to stick it to your conference foe, which leads to winning conference championships, you go for the heart of where they're able to pull their talent from. And this is a shot across the bow to Oklahoma and being able to really re-solidify Texas's position in Dallas-Fort Worth. And that's where I think the Pied Piper thing is amazing, because I think he is going to bring that. I think that alone is going to have Texas's top 3 class. I mean, Clemson recruits at such an insane rate. Alabama does. To be able to be there with them, I think is huge. But so a little long-winded on that, but I think that this
No,
commitment is going to transcend just one class. I think that it's going to really, it's been something Texas has needed to do for years, is to reassert their presence in Dallas Fort Worth, and I think this does it.
I don't doubt Tom Herman's ability to recruit. Period. I right now I doubt his ability to win football games at a high level consistently.
Right.
So I mean, this is not surprising to me that at this point in his tenure, this is the type of recruits that he's getting to come to the university. Not surprised at this. Like, this is why he came here. This is why you bring in Tom Herman, because you knew that if he could make it through a few years and establish his pipelines and establish the things that he needed to do, you would start to see the recruiting classes tick up and these types of players consider University of Texas. Well, now Ewers is on board. You're seeing the first guy. Now you have to hope that Herman can keep it together enough on the field to get to be able to coach a Quinn Ewers by 2022, even get him on campus. And I think he will. And I think Herman will do well enough to make it. And I think that we'll see that. It's just very interesting to see this develop like this. We haven't seen this sort of Malik Jefferson for a little, was sort of that what we considered the next sort of person to do that we thought would take us out. And Malik, say what you want about Malik Jefferson and his ability, but we didn't always see Malik Jefferson. We didn't see the 5-star abilities always translate into 5-star play with Malik, at least on a consistent level. And I think that some of the Pied Piper talk with Malik, I think some of it was overhyped as well as we look back at it. Now hindsight's 2020, but this is the guy. This can be your once in a generation player to build around. And we'll see if if Quinn Ewers can be Mac Brown's Vince Young.
Yeah.
And I only say that, I obviously wouldn't throw that comparison around loosely, but the Vince Young comparison, because of where he's rated in Rivals and the commitment to Texas, if Tom Herman is going to be the guy at UT long term, I mean, like a Mac Brown type tenure, then Quinn Ewers may have to be his Vince Young.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned the Malik Jefferson recruitment, because I just all the everything that was happening around that recruitment, you almost had Malik as a DFW recruit. He almost brought Kyler Murray into the fold. There was the whole thing where Kyler Murray secretly visited campus. He posted a picture of a Texas jersey on social media, all those things. And it was all this like that was such a big swing. But even as big as that recruitment was and that commitment was, it's not anywhere near the magnitude of this one, which is not a slight against Malik Jefferson. It's
right.
How good Quinn Ewers is as a recruit, it is a generational type talent. And yeah, it's a shame that we didn't get to see the 5-star Malik on campus and how that kind of played out, but it's exciting. I mean, but that's the thing. You list these names of who he's out running throwing routes to. And I think a quarterback brings a completely different level of the Pied Piper-ness to a recruitment. It's hard for a linebacker, to kind of, I feel like, have that same type of presence with recruits around the region or the city, wherever they may be. I think for Ewers to reach out to every top end wide receiver, tight end, running back in DFW to say, let's go run some routes. It carries a completely different.
Yep. It's a great point. It's a really great point.
So I think he can do it. I mean, it's just, especially now, didn't really have like the same kind of social media aspect that like during the Vince Young recruitment, like how could Vince Young reach out? They didn't have as many of these camps, as many of these things where Vince Young could be reaching out to wide receivers all across the country to say, when you're in Texas, let's get together and run routes together. Like it's a totally different, I feel like we'll see, but you got to win. I mean, if Texas is
Yeah, but
extremely disappointing this season, I don't know if it affects the Ewers recruitment because he seems to be a lifelong fan, but like maybe it affects some of these other ones.
no, and that's why, to your point about social media, that's why Alabama and Clemson, who you mentioned them both by name earlier. That's one reason that they've had been able to keep their stranglehold on it for such a long amount of time. The development of social media, like you see the ebbs and flows of college football throughout the decades, and you see the big names, and then they go down, and then they come up again, and then they come down again. This sustained success that Nick Saban has had at Alabama and that Dabo Swinney has had at Clemson, that is not by accident. It's because they're taking advantage of the world that we live in and the social media world and everything that revolves around it. They are the best at it, period.
Yeah.
And they win. Like you said, you have to win too. You can't just have both, but they win. Everything is connected now with social media. All the players can do that. And because they consistently win and the best players are consistently going there, it's really easy to rack up. Exactly like you were saying, this is the type of talent to do that for Texas. The scariest thing about this for me, he's a junior this year in high school, man. Like this is 2 years away from coming to fruition.
Yeah.
We're talking about this guy, like if he lives up to the billing, he's Vince Young in terms of talent. Like not the same type of quarterback, not the same, but in terms of being an elite quarterback, he's the guy. So 2 years away, man. It'll be fun to watch all this play out. Hopefully Texas can put it together and win some games and be consistent and take the next step this year that they've been pointing at. And Ewers gets on campus and rocks out, man. I mean, you got to hope it as a Texas football fan. This is what you got to hope for. You got to hope for this to develop like this, and then just hopefully you can see it through.
Yeah, and the last one thing I want to get on about that before we move on is the decommitment of Jalen Milroe this past week. And last week we were discussing this with Mike about the quarterback room. The transfer portal kind of worked itself out ahead of time, it looks like, because Jalen Milroe, after the commitment of Quinn Ewers, decommitted and committed to Alabama. You wish him well. I think if anything at this point, you just have to hope that Hudson Card he lives up to the billing, because you got one more year of Sam Ehlinger, and you mentioned we have a 2-year span there of, kind of depending on how it works out, but then you have Hudson Card essentially taking over at that point. We still don't know it. I still don't project Jaquindon Jackson as being a quarterback at UT, but maybe he does. But now you just have to hope that one of them hits, because there's not an issue of like, okay, well, if Hudson Card, you have Jalen Milroe coming in next spring, and they can battle it out, and the best one takes over for a year or two before Ewers is ready to go. Now you just have to hope that Hudson Card is, as good as apparently he's been in camp. So
are we writing off Casey Thompson too early? Should we be discussing him as a viable candidate to fill that gap?
I am. I just don't know. I think with what Hudson Card apparently already getting number 2 reps in camp, I think the writing's on the wall there. I think it was Mike that made a great point last week about if something was to happen to Sam Ehlinger this season, is, do you hand the keys to Hudson Card and let him try to drive the bus, or do you bring in Thompson to steady it? And I think that's probably what they want, is to have Thompson to come in to fill in for Ellinger if there's an injury. I don't see Thompson being on campus beyond this season. I think he's going to.
Go ahead.
No, I don't see him wanting to be a career backup at Texas. I think he wants to go start somewhere. And I think with Hudson Card, unless something happens with Hudson Card, I don't see a path for Thompson to start next year.
Is he gonna be the next like Jevin Sneed? We're gonna see, or Bouchel is gonna go and have moderate success at another mid-level school and sort of. I mean, is he even that like? I feel like if he's that talented, like
we would have seen him.
I mean, it doesn't seem like he's like, it's almost like he's the placeholder number 2 by default right now.
Yeah,
like he's the and that the writing may be on the wall there, like you said, but man, I feel like he's gonna have to play at some point this season. I feel like we'll see Thompson on the field, and I don't know. I'm not saying it'll be in meaningful action, but I wouldn't be surprised to see. I mean, Sam's obviously the dude, but to see both of those backups see time this season at some point. At least I hope that they're afforded the opportunity to, because they're beating down somebody so badly that they can have some garbage time to get both of them on the field, especially with the new red shirt rules and with how funky the NCAA is. If they're going to allow them to have even like a second red shirt on top of that, if you didn't play 4 games, the NCAA is still trying to figure out what they're going to do with that. So, and I don't trust them I don't even understand why they haven't decided, that college football hasn't decided to break away from this from the NCAA completely after we've seen how toothless and worthless they are. I mean, we already knew all that, but this pandemic has absolutely reminded us that NCAA basically, aside from handing out punishments, they don't even do a good job with that.
They're useless. They're completely useless.
So, I mean, for if Casey Thompson, we'll find out. He'll get a little bit of run this year, but I think you're right. The writing's on the wall. I think he's probably on his way out. And again, I don't blame him for wanting to play. Like
no, exactly.
Right?
And I'm sure he's got talent.
Not play.
He's got talent, but my question would be, I see it this way, that Tom Herman wants Thompson at the moment if something were to happen to Sam.
Right now.
Beyond this season, when he has to name a new starting quarterback, and it's either going to be Thompson, Card, or Jaquindon Jackson, do you name Thompson your starting quarterback and risk losing out on Hudson Card? I know he's a Texas fan. I know he's shown out at wide receiver when he was at Lake Travis. He can move around, all those kinds of things. I just don't see there being, if you gave Tom Herman the truth serum and you asked him, you have to keep one quarterback, who's it going to be? He's going to go with Hudson Card. The ceiling is higher, the athleticism. That's nothing against Thompson being a perfectly adequate and a serviceable quarterback in NCAA level. I just don't see it happening in Texas, not with the way that the quarterback room is set now. And I think Hudson Card is the guy that's going to be the dude until Quinn Ewers shows up. And I hope that Hudson Card is good enough that they almost look at redshirting Quinn Ewers, because that means that he's been that good over that time. And
oh man, I hope we get back to that point, man, where we can redshirt quarterbacks again. What a concept. I mean,
exactly.
Thompson redshirted, but Thompson wasn't going to play. He wasn't going to see the field with that quarterback room at the time anyway. So I want to see like where Texas can get back to the point where, and Mike has brought this up in conversations with us before, where being able to just flat out know that you're redshirting this year, period.
Right.
Don't even think about the field. Think about improving your skills and being a better quarterback. that's the luxury that you want to have with the Quinn Ewers. I'm with you 100% on that. Would that be like if you named Thompson the starter? Would that be like when Bill O'Brien named Tom Savage the starter and then benched him at halftime and then we never saw him again and Deshaun Watson played forever? Is it that kind of facade? Is it really that big of a gap for you between Thompson and
Card?
Card?
I think given what we know about Hudson Card or what we've been hearing from camp says that. I mean, I think the fact that he just got to campus really, relatively recent and is already getting number 2 reps says a lot. And I think that the fact that Thompson was already in the transfer portal before says some to that as well. And that's kind of what happened. It was him and Buechele were both looking to leave at the same time. And then you're just left with Sam Ehlinger. And that was the re-recruitment process that Tom Herman had to go through to keep Thompson on campus just in the case that something happened to Sam. The quarterback room has evolved since then. It's been restocked. Like I said, I'm sure Thompson's a great kid. He's been a good, there's nothing, I'm sure he's perfectly serviceable playing quarterback in college football. I don't think he's a game changer, game breaker type athlete and quarterback that Hudson Card is. That's just my own personal thing from what I've seen and what I've heard. Obviously there's a totally different story to be told when they actually get on the field and play against other opponents. But if Hudson Card is what we've been led to believe he is, then Thompson is still a backup at Texas in the 2021 season. And that's why, and he's gone. And I wouldn't blame him a single bit for that. But real quick on this, in terms of the timeline from Hudson Card to Quinn Ewers in 2021, if Thompson decides to go play elsewhere, who's behind Hudson Card? Because now Jalen Milrow's out of this class. And that's where apparently there's a kid from Austin High that's committed to I forget. I don't have it here in front of me, but it was, there's Tom Herman should go out and get a quarterback in this class, which is something like Mike said last week. You want to have a quarterback in every single class now because of the transfer portal in these situations. We're not in a world anymore where there's a Matt Nordgren or, one of these kind of guys that's going to be like a senior backup quarterback, for Vince Young.
Matt Nordgren.
There's not going to be someone that's like all these guys want to play. It's why they go to a program like Texas and why they decide, now with the portal can go somewhere else. And you have to recruit because of that. And I wouldn't blame Thompson a single bit if he left. But yeah, to wrap that all up, I think we'll see Card, but there needs to be a backup quarterback there in case something happens to him. And then it's the Quinn Ewers show.
But if you get to that point, you're probably screwed anyway, right? Like if you're worried about who your backup is, you're probably in a bad way anyway, unless you're Alabama.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, honestly, if you do your third string quarterback, you're in a world of hurt anyway. And then, but even if you're at your backup, sometimes that's for most programs. At least at Texas, we've seen that's enough to kill a season at times. But just because that quarterback room just hasn't had any depth at all. So like you said, but yeah, man, well, hey, let's move on. Let's touch on some things real quick. I wanted to hit on the NFL briefly. The only thing with the NFL I wanted to touch on is that apparently Disney's been angling to get ESPN and ABC involved. Like, so, because Monday Night Football is already on ESPN. What they want to do is they want to simulcast it on ABC. Or I don't know if that's the right word, simulcast. They want to do the dual broadcast, ESPN and ABC.
Yeah.
And obviously everything they do like that, they always call it ESPN on ABC. You see the branding for that and all that stuff. But basically this would, by agreeing to do that, by putting it on ABC, it's basically a ploy to get ABC in the mix for the Super Bowl, which would then get ESPN talent on air for the Super Bowl. So ESPN's been struggling with having, cuts and having to lay off some of their bigger names. And I think many people would agree that the quality, the content at ESPN has basically come back down to where everybody else is. They don't stand out anymore. Would you agree, Kerry? ESPN is just
Yeah,
sort of another sports outlet at this point.
absolutely. I think maybe it's just the nature of the sports that I typically watch on a regular basis. But like I'm hardly ever on ESPN outside of college football season.
Right.
Um, you know, all the other outlets kind of have picked up the slack. You've got NBC picking up most of it's got the English Premier League and got the NHL.
Mhm.
Fox gets Major League Baseball, and baseball's all over all kinds of various outlets. And yeah, I think ESPN, they used to be you never had to change the channel.
Right. But this is their way of sort of working their way into that of that conversation to be into the Super Bowl discussion again, because they just rotate right now. They rotate on Fox, CBS, and NBC. They just sort of circle around, and ABC/ESPN/Disney wants to get in. Obviously, who wouldn't? But I wanted to go down all these TV deals. They all expire. Why this is important is because all these TV deals expire in 2 years. There's going to be a big renegotiation of television deals. A big influx of money will come into the league, which at this time, obviously, when they're going to lose a lot of money, that TV deal, I think, will really help. Not that the league, I would worry about them overall. It's the NFL. It's the strongest brand in this country, in my opinion, or one of them.
The
But
Shield.
yeah, that TV, yeah. But that influx of TV money that will come in 2 years will cure any ills that came from this pandemic. ESPN pays almost $2 billion for Monday Night Football alone. I didn't know that they of all of the networks, they pay the most. And it seems to me that Monday Night Football, the quality of games on Monday Night Football over the years, and the quality of announcing, for that matter, we've discussed this, has just been subpar to pay $1.9 billion to show one game a week for.
Well,
it was interesting.
and it's interesting. We have in our notes here the comparison between the networks for that cost. And when you talk about nearly $2 billion for Monday Night Football, where NBC is they're at 950 million, a lot of money, but like half for just Sunday Night Football, which is miles and miles better in terms of presentation, quality of matchups, all those things. What a deal for NBC. Half the cost of Monday Night Football, and it's the most watched program in the country throughout the year, because it's not, you can have an antenna and you can watch Sunday Night Football. What a deal.
It's almost like I feel like ESPN has to pay the tax because they're not an antenna. They're not a network. They're not an
Right.
NBC and ABC. I mean, they're not ABC, I guess, even though that's family, but they're not. That's not ABC. Didn't buy Monday Night Football, right? It's the ESPN brand, even though it's all under the same umbrella, but it's ESPN, right? They didn't want to put it on ABC. Well, now they're coming to the table and changing their minds because they're failing as a network. At least not failing. They're just not to the level that they're used to. So getting back into the Super Bowl discussion is big. Yeah, Fox paid $1.75 billion for NFC games on Sundays and Thursday Night Football, and then CBS paid $1 billion for the AFC games. So I think CBS and NBC, to be honest, had some steals of deals there.
Yeah, but even Fox's deal is not that, even, it's still less than ESPN's deal, and they get at least a couple games on Sundays and a Thursday night game. So for the number of games that they get to broadcast for that price is pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
they get the Cowboys 13 games a year.
Exactly.
So I mean, you're paying for that. Fox wins in that deal, no doubt about it. So, but I just want to touch on that real quick. Kerry, what do we got in football?
Well, I was thinking about discussing a little Arsenal today, but I mean, nothing has really happened over the last week. Next week we have the Community Shield, so maybe we'll get into the stuff a little bit more, because I think some of this, we're kind of waiting on a few things with Arsenal, a couple contracts to be announced, a couple new signings potentially to be announced. So I wonder if we'll just hold off on Arsenal stuff for this week and get to it before the season essentially restarts here a couple weeks after it just ended. So
quick turnaround for sure. Yeah, man, for sure.
So we'll jump into the breakfast wrap here. And, we mentioned the birthday thing earlier. I've been getting some questions from some viewers about the mustache situation here. And, it's people all over the internet have been, some love it, some hate it. There's been a lot of feedback. But the main question has been, why the hell do you have that stupid thing on your face? It's mentioned earlier, just had a birthday. And today I have the immense joy and pleasure of going to get a new license picture taken for my driver's license. So for those that were wondering, that's the reason that this thing's been hanging around, is to try it. And the hair basically is to try to continue my tradition of taking the most ridiculous, driver's license picture possible. So here's a little glimpse at the one that I've been going with for about, I don't know, 12 years now.
Man. Oh yeah, that's great. That's show hair right there, man. That's great stuff.
So might be saying, I just wanted to mention this because the mustache might be going away after taking that picture today. Might be saying goodbye to an old friend. And
you take the picture for the ID and then shave it. I love it.
Maybe we'll see.
Possibly.
We'll kind of see how I'm feeling there. But like I said, it's been a very divisive topic. So I don't know. Maybe I don't want to upset our viewers like Denise, who are so kind to leave comments on the page.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to appeal to a broader audience, and people that don't want to see the mustache might come into the fold. But Jay, you got anything on the breakfast wrap there?
I'm happy leaving it right there, man.
Well, I did want to say on a little more serious note, I saw this before we started the show today. We're supposed to be having I'll share this here too. We've got a little update on Marco, which is currently the tropical storm in the Gulf, which it's going to be an exciting week. I mean, what is it? 2 storms in the Gulf. It's right on brand for 2020. But
yeah, of course.
But this is the latest projection. It's got it basically coming right up into the Houston area and into central Texas. So I know that's where most of everybody that's watching and that's tuned in is at. So I think this thing's supposed to be making landfall on Tuesday. So for those of y'all out there, hopefully everybody stays safe. Hopefully this thing just brings a good soaking and not floods and winds and all the other stuff that other storms have brought to our Gulf Coast. So just wanted to put that out there for those of you that might not be following this thing too closely. Just take care of yourselves over the next couple days, and hopefully we're all right. So
yeah, man, everybody stay safe. We appreciate y'all listening. The viewership is through the roof, and we appreciate it. Like Kerry said, we're on our way quickly to 10,000 subscribers. You said we're on our way. We're not there yet.
At least that's just
we're heading that direction.
We're rapidly approaching.
Yeah.
Don't pay attention to the YouTube numbers, what it says. Like we get to see the behind the scenes numbers, and we're getting there. The numbers are excellent. Best numbers you've ever
seen. Fuzzy math,
yeah.
The best numbers, only the best. Only the best.
And you never know, like, subscribe, and you never know, you might get featured as next week's YouTube comment of the week. Who
knows?
Maybe.
Leave a comment. Yeah, you see how much. What was her name? Sharon what?
Denise Sullivanov or Sullivanovsky.
Yeah. I'm sure that's her real name.
Yeah. So right.
Yeah,
not a computer generated name at all, but
not at all. So yeah.
Well, thanks everybody, and Jay, it's been a good one.
Yeah, enjoyed it, man.
We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good. Peace.
Thanks everybody.
Represent Fatal, baby.